So imagine you're at home in Ohio, any of the 50 states. You get on your phone an Uber request. You know, you're an Uber driver, you do ride share, you do pickup and deliveries, right? You accept it. You head over to the location you're being told to make this pickup. You pull into the driveway, you get out of the car. As you walk up to the patio to pick up this item, a man comes out the house with a gun pointed at you. He advances towards you, tells you you can't leave, tries to take your phone, and when you try to leave, he not only shoots you once, he shoots you a total of 3 times. And you're dead. All right, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. This is the story of a woman by the name of Lo-Ltetha 70-year-old black woman who, in her mind, thought she was doing an Uber pickup and delivery. Little did she know that when she would pull up to this house, that William Brock, an older white man, would come out, not brandishing a gun, but pointing a gun at her. So a story came out over the weekend out of Clark County, Ohio. This is Miss Foxy I Refuse podcast, by the way. Doing things a little bit differently. Where this happened to this lady, there's dash cam video footage from her car that shows her getting out of the car, approaching the house, and the woman had a walking issue, right? Looked like could be anybody's grandmother. You know, looks like a woman that means no harm, is just out here trying to make some money. At 70 years old, is, you know, walking a little to the left and the right up to the house, is trying to get back to her car while this white man is aiming a gun at her. And not like a Magnum or anything, but it looked like one of those late 1900 smaller guns. So the story goes that apparently this man was getting a lot of scam calls. One particular call that day was claiming that he had a relative that was incarcerated, and he's due at the courthouse to pay this $12,000 ransom or this relative, and he will be killed. He had been getting these scamming calls on his landline. Now, at the same time that he was getting these calls, Lo-Ltetha got a request to pick up an item at this address. She goes to the address that she's given, And of course, what you see in the dash cam video from her car is her pulling up to the house, getting out the car, going up to the house. She comes back in frame trying to get away from this Brock guy who has a gun aimed at her. And the rest of the story goes what the news stations have been reporting. So he shot her once. They get into a fight. She's trying to leave and he shoots her 2 more times. At some point, he calls the cops, this Brock guy, or the authorities, to tell them that he shot somebody he believes was scamming him. They show up, they try to get her to the hospital, and she's essentially dead on arrival. While the cops are at the man's house, his landline continues to ring. There's multiple calls coming in. Now, the real cops pick up the phone and answer it. The person on the other end claims that they are a police officer. And when the real police officer invites them to meet them in public, they said, sure, they'll show up. They never do. So, if it doesn't get any crazier by now, the most that happens is, of course, the man that shot and killed the lady is charged with multiple accounts of, well, murder, obviously. I believe the 2nd degree, and I think they're trying for 1st degree. But the person that set it up, now remember, this was done through an Uber account. You know, Lo-Ltetha Toland, 70-year-old black lady living in Ohio, just using Uber as a means of making money. Now, for this to actually go off, or for this to work, the person doing the request also has to have an Uber account that has their personal information that Uber believes to be real, address, phone number, if there's a credit card attached to the account. At the end of the day, it's trackable. The only thing that happened to this person that set this up, their Uber account got banned. So here's where I'm at with it, right? First of all, this does not help attract. And this, there have been multiple things that have happened since the creation and implementation of Uber and Lyft, where people have gotten into the wrong car, ended up dead, people have been kidnapped, and then you have this case where a person is shot and killed. It's these kind of stories that would cause a person that would like to make extra money or realize they need to make extra money not to go that route. Because there is really nothing protecting you, your physical form, when you show up to deliver something, to pick up somebody, to drop off somebody. You don't know technically what you're arriving to or coming from, or what may be there when you get there. I did Lyft for about 4 years, up until December of 2019. aside from nothing really protecting you, like you don't know if what situation you may be going into, the attitudes, like did it in Baltimore, people get into your car and have an attitude with you because of their lack of time management skills. Like, ma'am, you know the daycare where your daughter is closes in 10 minutes. Yeah, here you are in Walmart, where I pick you up from. You get in my car having an attitude. If you had time to grocery shop, because you had to bring her back, and she had a shopping cart full of food. Thank God I didn't have to do that part too, because that's the other thing. But people just, on top of that aspect, you also have to deal with, you don't know what kind of personalities or attitudes come into your car. And then they want to treat you like you're their help. So there's that, where what essentially protects, what kind of insurance does the driver have, or the delivery person? And this is on top of what coverage does their vehicle have, from the long-term wear and tear while being of service to Uber and Lyft. Like, they're not paying you for auto care. You're not getting paid that much. You're really only getting paid from the time you pick the person up to the time, to when you drop them off. You're not getting paid for the time en route to pick up the person. And that's if you accept it. You show up, the person still has to come out. There have been times where I've been sitting outside of the first pickup location waiting for the person to come out. I call after the timers run out, and the person picks up the phone, says they didn't call an Uber. So you wasted all that gas, you didn't get any money from it, and you're out probably like a half an hour, 45 minutes. That could have been dedicated to somebody, to an actual person. So you have that part. You're not getting covered. They're not giving you extra money towards your car since you're using your private vehicle. And you don't know what kind of batshit crazy person is going to run up on you. So where's the protection for the driver? Then you got to factor in what kind of discourse does the user using the service get when something like this happens? I'm no lawyer, but I would say if I was the Uber user that sent Miss Hall to this house, and it led to her demise, there has to be an obvious and reasonable amount of culpability on the person that sent her there. Now, I don't know if that means solicitation of murder, but definitely an accessory to it. Because I'm willing to bet my 401k that the same person that sent Miss Hall to this house is in the same network of the scammers that kept calling his house. This person may not have been the same person that claimed to be a police officer and was playing with the real police officer's intelligence. But some of these scammers operate out of a makeshift call center. They got their little conference tables, they got their little MacBooks, and they just got all this free time to bother and harass elderly people. And it sucks because the other thing is, what's the protection for these elderly people? Because that's another epidemic where, while the government may have set up the no-call list and signed these bills and stuff, these scammers are still getting through. Claiming to be the IRS, claiming to be the FBI, saying, if you don't pay X amount of dollars, we're going to bust through your door and arrest you for tax evasion. Or they'll call your work line and say, we have your son, we kidnapped your son. If you don't pay this ransom, we're going to kill your son. I had that happen to a lady I worked with in my office before the pandemic. And it was all smoke and mirrors. I had to tell my mother to stop answering the damn phone. Lady, you have been around since Nixon. The IRS does not make house calls. If anything, they're going to investigate you for X amount of years, but they never make phone calls or house calls. But the point is that the scammers primarily target the vulnerable demographics, and that's the elderly, senior citizens, people in nursing homes, people in state housing, government housing, on fixed incomes. Essentially like social shut-ins, right? Where they don't go out much. They have an askewed point of the world. And they are essentially in a phase of life where things are slowing down. The mental capacities aren't as quick as they were the day before or the years before. And they actually think what they're hearing over this phone line from this person they've never heard from or know is going to actually happen. So fast forward to this Brock guy who has been getting these calls tenfold. And he thinks this person that's coming up to his house is from that phone call. The perfect storm, right? So, what an ending though. Like, this is a very rare case. One that definitely speaks to, this is what happens when you don't put enough protections in place. Like I said, there's nothing protecting the delivery people from whatever they're about to drive into or walk up into and don't know. I mean, I hate to think how long it would take for this to be solved or for this to be investigated had it not been for the dash cam footage from her car. Because this is like bumfuck USA. when you think of Ohio, nobody's thinking, oh, I'm gonna go to Clark County. This is the place to be. I couldn't even tell you where that is on the map. And this could have possibly ended up like another story to cover. Probably would have got 2 minutes of coverage. But this didn't turn out that way. And I'm thankful that it didn't. Unfortunately, this black lady lost her life. Somebody's mother, grandmother, aunt, cousin lost her life on which started out just another day to make money. And we could get into the whole economic aspect. Like, why are the elderly still working? And on top of that, like, relegated to which is essentially a dangerous job, such as Uber delivery, ride sharing. I'm sure you've been on YouTube, you know, after you've been to the I Refuse podcast YouTube channel to follow and subscribe, that you've seen the videos of the Uber drivers, what they go through. Some people are drunk. Some people are just assholes because there's a sense of entitlement. You're doing this for me, so I'm going to put you through what I want. And some Uber drivers, ride sharing people, are packing. Like, it's not enough just to have a dashboard camera. Because you've had passengers hit drivers in the side of their face, in the side of their heads. You've had passengers spit on them. You've had passengers pull out a gun and start firing and stuff. You've had some crazy shit happen during the course of those rides. But also, what needs to be discussed is Mr. Brock. Mr. William Brock. I think I called him Alan earlier. For you to come out your house with this, it looked like this gun, he had this gun since J. Edgar Hoover was like in his 30s. It was one of those kind of guns, like a 19, early 20th century type of gun. Like guns you see in like the Untouchables, right? Y'all came out in his plaid and his weave belt and his plaided khakis, had this gun pointed like it was the Wild Wild West. So you may not be able to make out the audio because the dash cam is inside of her car. With that being said, I don't recall him practicing any discernment, any like, what's the word? Any critical process. Like, in this day and age, it is still possible for people to be mistaken. Now, I may not, it's still early to factor, whether race played a part into it. Is this guy, or isn't he, possibly a racist? I don't know. But what I do know from watching this is that from the moment she walks in front of her car, and it takes her a while because, like I said, she had a walking impediment. from the time you see her walk across the driveway to the time that she is walking back with panic on her face and this man's aiming the gun at her, not even 5 seconds. And he is on her ass. It leads me to believe he didn't think, okay, maybe this is a mistake. He didn't think, oh, maybe this person is mistaken. Maybe I shouldn't come out the house with a gun on this total stranger. Like, even in the 21st century, you got to think, you got to have some level of awareness. Like, I don't want to lean 100% into the idea that this was targeted. Because I believe that William Brock was also in fear. Being harassed, being hounded by scammers. And probably thought, oh, this is definitely, like, this threat is definitely real. But there's got to be some recourse to these scammers. And there's got to be a more thorough investigation as to where and who these people are. It didn't say how long they had been harassing him or what the nature of the phone calls were. I mean, for all you know, these phone numbers could be burner numbers. But if the government can trace IP addresses and ping a person's whereabouts by what towers the cell phone numbers ping off of, surely they can find these people. Because one thing you definitely don't want is another Lo-Ltetha Toland passing away. Like, the economy is so bad that we have elderly people doing this line of work with no protection, no safety net. Just trying to make a little bit of money. And losing their life over it. It's just sad all around. Like, you gotta put a pin. Gotta put this targeting elderly people. Gotta put an end to it. Now, before I get up out of here, if I know the legal process, I mean, each year you find yourself losing faith in it, particularly when it comes to interracial situations. He is probably looking at the rest of his natural life in jail. They might show a little mercy or clemency, given his age. But there's really nothing There's really no way out of it for Mr. Brock. And Mrs. Hall's family lost her to this. And what's Uber going to do with their app? Because, they do these updates, right? I'm sorry, y'all. They do these updates. Some are slow than others. There has to be, the next couple of updates have to be one where the driver is in more control. There is a tighter legitimacy background security measure in the app to prevent scammer or burner accounts. Because it honestly doesn't take much to use Uber, to have an Uber account or a Lyft account. And they probably should do away with this pressure. They can't explicitly put that in writing, but this idea that if you don't accept every request or you don't do it in time, you may face your rating going down. And it's like, well, damn, I need this money. This is my only source of income. But like I say, you don't know what you're going to pull up to. What if you pull up to something like this? Like, what's Uber and Ride, Lyft and Ride, all these other ride sharing programs and apps going to do to ensure further security for their drivers and employees? I know it'll definitely take some governmental interjection. Because this is where we are now. You've had 2 deaths on the hands of ride sharing or ride delivery, whatever. It's Mr. Fox of the I Refuse podcast. Be sure to check out the rest of the I Refuse podcast wherever you see us. We're on YouTube, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. We're also on 5 or 6 other streaming platforms. Also getting to the usual suspects. Getting to the I Refuse podcast after dark. Follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Twitter at I Refuse podcast, the Instagram at I Refuse podcast, _ between the words. And I will catch you guys later. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.